More than $2 billion. That is how much President Trump and his businesses made last year. That is an indoor record, one you will not find in the history of any previous president. Big changes are coming today to federal student loan programs. Millions will have to pay more. Graduate students will face capped loan amounts, and we break it all down for you. We love, as you know, sports and pop culture here. So, U.S. men's national team in the World Cup. Taylor Swift's going to get married. What to do? Swifties, stay tuned. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. When does cryptocurrency go from being a scam to a path to unequaled presidential riches? When you are Donald Trump. In 2021, Trump dismissed Bitcoin, then the leading cryptocurrency, as a, quote, scam against the dollar and a, quote, disaster waiting to happen. He changed tune in the 2024 campaign, vowing to raise what he called a crypto army to boost digital assets. Upon returning to the White House, Trump changed regulations to favor cryptocurrency. He and his family have benefited handsomely in the process. How handsomely? $1.4 billion in gains from, as the New York Times put it today, quote, businesses that directly benefited from his actions as president, unquote. But that is not all. In the first year of his second term, Trump raked in at least $2.2 billion in revenue. This compared to the $622 million his enterprises earned the year before he returned to the presidency. We know all these numbers from just released disclosure forms. It would be good to know how much in taxes Trump paid on this extravagant cash haul, but the president does not release those. And due to a recent settlement he made with his own agencies over the improper release of older tax forms, there can be no audits of Trump tax issues. Not for him, not for his family, not for his businesses. Riches, all tied up in a tidy, protective bundle of power. We will delve into the details of all this a bit later in the show, but one note about Trump's crypto investments and his own branded digital token known as the Trump meme coin. There's a dollar sign before the Trump. You can see it there. A recent investigation by Reuters found that while Trump and his family made more than $2 billion on crypto, there were, quote, more than 1 million investors whose net losses totaled $2.3 billion at the end of April of this year. Reuters went on to report those who lost money included retail buyers of crypto and crypto-linked equities, as well as those who invested indirectly through funds like ETFs with exposure to Trump crypto. The loss total includes paper losses on unsold investments. Those are important details. While Trump and his family were making money, scores upon scores of American investors, believing Trump tokens or funds linked with them, were sure to deliver big returns, instead lost money. Investing, as we know, is risky business. But Trump's gains appear as close to risk-free as possible. It therefore appears to pay, and pay handsomely, to sit atop the regulatory and branding pyramid. We begin tonight with senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang. Weijia is with me here at the family table. Great to have you here. So this is a lot. We have never in the history of the American presidency seen revenue of this kind linked directly to things actively going on and under the aegis of the federal regulatory apparatus the president sits atop.
And that is why Democrats have said this is not a coincidence. When you look at Trump administration policies as it relates to crypto, they argue that Trump has appointed crypto-friendly regulators, that he has deregulated things for the industry to make it easier, and that he has canceled out investigations into crypto firms. So Elizabeth Warren, for one, has been extremely outspoken about this, saying that, look, American people, the president is benefiting from these decisions. And to your point, Major, an unprecedented way. We're talking about $1.2 billion in reported income from cryptocurrency alone for President Trump. And it's really important that you just pointed out that the value of those meme coins and the value of those other assets that investors bought went down while that didn't impact him, because he said today, as he was defending this, the reason why I made so much money is because the stock market and everybody made so much money along with me. And that is simply not true, especially as it relates to crypto. But the White House insists that there is no conflict of interest, and it is not illegal for the president to invest in private companies. But the reason why Democrats continue to point this out is, the fact that he has taken actions that seem to directly benefit his investments.
And Weijia, you well remember during the Biden presidency, which you covered, there was tremendous Republican curiosity that morphed into outrage about Hunter Biden and money made in relationships to foreign governments that they thought was somehow influenced by the president. Now, that was a double or triple bank shot if it was real, and the Republicans certainly came to believe that it was. This is not a double or triple bank shot. This is right in-house.
It is there in a, nearly 1,000-page report spelled out for the public to see. And this is just another example of Republicans suddenly becoming way less vocal about the same issue. But there are some Republicans, I think, that are also, questioning this eye-popping figure when you're talking about billions of dollars, Major. That is a different ballgame than we've seen from any other president.
And very quickly, there was a new ride for the president today aboard a newly redesigned, or not redesigned, but the interior and the security components within it redone because it was a gifted jet from the Qatari government, and the president flew on it for the first time.
Yes, speaking of potential foreign conflicts from gifts, this is the biggest gift that America has accepted from a foreign government. And it was the maiden voyage today. The president took it to North Dakota for the opening of the Roosevelt Presidential Library. And he claims that this is just a temporary fix because the old planes were outdated. They didn't have the proper technology or security features that it should have. And Boeing, which was commissioned to provide a new Air Force One, is late. And so we expect that plane to come in sometime in mid-2028. So the president says this is just a temporary plane that we're going to use.
But he did use the word gift today, talking to reporters. And it's very clear that this plane, once it goes out of service, will go to the Trump Presidential Library.
Well, he says it's going to. And if you look at the renderings from the library, you see that there is a huge plane
Sounds
right
like a
in
gift to me.
the middle. Well, here's another gift quickly, since you and I have both taken international voyages on the old Air Force One.
Yes, we did.
For hours
many,
and hours and hours. Yes. There wasn't a single bed on the plane except for the president,
right.
Which means you
sat up.
And
recline a little bit, but not
yes.
much.
And
very little legroom.
I get that's our job. We shouldn't be complaining.
Nope, never complain.
The reporters who traveled with the president today describe what is nothing less than dripping in luxury.
Yes, sumptuous and lay-down seats.
There's a massage function for the press seats, I'm just saying.
There's a massage function for the press seats. That says it all. Weijia Jiang, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Major.
Andrea Fuller has been following all of this, what we've been talking about for the New York Times, and joins me now. Andrea, you heard the president say to reporters before he got on that gifted Qatari plane that is now the new Air Force One that I don't know what's going on. They're in closed accounts. You put their money in, and I don't talk to them. As if this is all in some sort of blind trust. That's not what we're talking about, is it?
That's correct. His investments, his traditional stocks, are in fact managed by a broker, but a lot of people, including a lot of Democrats, expected President Trump, when he took office, to put all of his financial assets, including his business assets, in a blind trust. And that's not how it works. He still has a lot of influence over those, as do his sons, and they're ultimately controlled by him.
And we go back to that video at Andrews Air Force Base this morning, control room, because the president, while he's telling reporters, I don't know what's going on with this, I have no visibility into this, His two sons, Eric and Don Jr., are right over his shoulder in full camera view. They know everything. And as we know, this is a close-knit family, and it would be reasonable to assume, discuss these matters.
I mean, I certainly can't speak to that, but what I can say is that President Trump and his sons and his wife, in fact, have all become involved in the cryptocurrency business over the last 2 years since the 2024 campaign. As you said before, there's been a real pivot in how he talks about crypto, and his sons are involved in cryptocurrency ventures. Melania had her own meme coin. So cryptocurrency has really become intertwined with the Trump family.
And Andre, there are other ways in which this president and his various enterprises make money separate from crypto, are there not?
Absolutely. President Trump was always known as a real estate mogul. He's still got his real estate assets, his golf clubs, Mar-a-Lago. Those actually made more money than they did last in 2024 before he resumed office. They made more money last year in 2025 after he resumed office than they did in 2024. Mar-a-Lago's revenue went up. So did some of his golf clubs. He's also involved in a lot of real estate assets overseas. In his first term, he said, no new businesses overseas, but this term, that isn't the case. We've got Vietnam, we've got new properties in the Middle East. So the Trump business has been growing.
And from these disclosure forms, Andrea, do we learn everything or do we learn some things about money raised or money earned, rather, and the mechanisms by which it happened? Does this give us full view into this or only partial view?
Only a partial view. We don't know the valuations. These forms, unfortunately, don't give us President Trump's net worth. They tell us about his revenues, but a lot of the valuations are reported in incredibly broad ranges. They say, over 50 million, and that's a lot of numbers. So we don't really know his net worth from these forms. We only know last year what he took in as revenue.
Andrea Full of the New York Times, I appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Democratic Socialists scored another primary victory, this time in Colorado's 1st congressional district, which covers a good deal of Denver. Challenger Milat Quiros defeated longtime Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette, who had served in Congress since being elected in 1996. Joining me now, your friend and mine, CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, what is interesting about that race in Colorado District 1?
How are you, Major? And you can see no touchscreen tonight. We're doing this MTV Unplugged style.
There we go. There we go.
So, although I'm lousy at guitar. Look, the first thing you notice is this is happening in cities. You just mentioned we watched last night Colorado's first. That's Denver. A week ago, we were talking about New York and New York City and the same idea. Why is that? Well, first of all, you've got the kind of coalition that these kinds of candidates are drawing, which is you've got younger people. You do have more affluent districts. You've got more educated districts we're talking about here. And what's going on? Well, you've got high growth areas. You've got housing as an issue. All of those are commonalities in this. So link that then to what you mentioned at the top, this idea of socialism. Now, the polling nationally tells you that most Democrats do say they have at least a favorable view of what they see as socialism. Most Democrats say they would like to see the party at least incorporate some of those ideas. But I would add then when you follow that up and say, well, what does that mean to you? Many times they say, well, it just means fairness in their view. Now, detractors, and we're certainly going to hear a lot from them, Republicans are going to talk an awful lot about this, no matter how many DSA candidates win. The detractors describe it as being too reliant on the federal government, among other things. But that's the larger context here when you talk about where this is happening and also what socialism means to them.
And there's a theme emerging, Anthony, about restiveness in the Democratic activist base, which has led to some Democratic Socialist of America victories. Colorado also had two other races, one for governor, the Democratic nomination, and one for Senate. Different results. John Hickenlooper stayed, was a 74-year-old trying to repel, and he did successfully, a perceived progressive, agitated challenger. Michael Bennet, a sitting senator seeking the gubernatorial nomination, lost to someone perceived as more of a fighter and more progressive.
Well, let me pick up on two things. One is Hickenlooper, when you see the vote patterns, did well every place except Denver. So in some sense, that's going to be part of the argument for what you might call the more moderate wing of the party, which is to say they need to appeal beyond just the urban base. The second part of this, though, is that anti-incumbent feeling that you see both on the left and the right. For many, there's plenty of Democrats, and they tell you in the national polling, they want to see candidates that look like they're going to fight, whether that's against the current president, whether that's for a different kind of policy. That kind of affective approach, which is a little bit harder to quantify, but certainly is meaningful to a lot of these primary voters, Major.
Anthony Salvanto does not need a guitar because he sings the song of data and politics as well as anyone. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.
President Trump today touted progress in negotiations between the United States and Iran. It was interesting he did so. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Doha for indirect talks, meaning with intermediaries, not even talking face-to-face with the Iranian interlocutors. That's something we are going to talk about now with former National Security Advisor during the Trump administration. There were many, but he was a prominent one, H.R. McMaster. He is also a CBS News contributor. H.R., always a pleasure to have you here. Look, I don't want to be too flippant about this because the consequences are very large, but it seems like we're in a state of talking about talking about talking.
Yeah, it's worse than that, though, Major. And the reason it's worse than that is Iran is the one making the progress in these negotiations because they're receiving big paychecks. I mean, the Qataris are about to unfreeze $6 billion of assets. They've already sold 40 million barrels of oil. So they're filling their coffers back up. They're getting the infusion of cash they desperately needed to get themselves up off the mat. And you know where that's going to go, Major? That's going to go right back to building up military capabilities and to reinvigorating the terrorist and proxy network they have across the Middle East.
It was reported by the Wall Street Journal that the president met with his defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, and other senior military advisors to consider restarting the war. The president was asked about that today, and he said, quote, "The Iranians have come a long way," unquote. How do we reconcile those two things, or can we?
Yeah. Well, the Iranians have come a long way because they're getting everything that they want. And what they're saying right now to the Gulf states is, okay, hey, if you abandon your relationship with the United States, you bandwagon with us, you recognize that we control your economic model, we control the Strait of Hormuz, you supplicate to us basically, hey, then we're going to be okay. So what Iran is doing is taking what they're motivated by this perception of profound weakness in terms of U.S. resolve. They're trying to squeeze the U.S. out of the region because remember, I mean, Major, what they really want, what they've wanted really since 1979 is to get the U.S. out of the Middle East as the first step to establishing hegemonic influence in the region, surrounding Israel, destroying Israel, and killing all the Jews. I mean, they have not come off that, in my view, they being, the revolutionary leadership that still has their grip on power in Iran.
So, HR, you well remember, because we talked about it at the time, when this war began, and it's not an excursion, it was a war, let's be honest about that. The idea was we're now at this tipping point. Iran has never been weaker. Hezbollah is weak. Hamas is weak. The Houthis are weak. They've lost Syria. This is the time to possibly transform things, and that's not happening if I hear you now.
Well, I think what this is, I mean, it's a case of self-defeat, in my view. I mean, I think the president made a correct and risky, courageous decision to initiate this campaign against Iran. And the reason why I think that was appropriate and needed is Iran was racing to deepen that arsenal of drones and missiles and to use that as a conventional shield behind which they would reinvigorate their nuclear program. So I believe that the cost of not acting would have exceeded the cost of acting. But hey, there's no such thing as a war without cost or an easy war. And I think once that shipping was interrupted in the Gulf, once we saw just not a huge impact on global oil supply, but a significant one, and the president said he was worried about global recession and so forth. I mean, then the Iranians they were able to coerce us into backing off. And I think in retrospect, that's going to be seen as a big mistake. But I'll tell you what, Major, this isn't going to be a peace. Even if there is a movement toward a technical agreement, it'll be the Iranians stringing us along. And really what we're in is a transition phase into the next phase of the 47-year-long war they've been waging against, the great Satan, Israel and their Arab neighbors.
Hey, H.R. McMaster, I appreciate your expertise as always. Thank you, sir.
Hey, great to be with you, Major.
Still to come on the Takeout, significant changes to federal student loan policies. Well, they took effect today. My conversation with CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger on what borrowers need to know. Also, Kamala Harris has called New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, and she has met with pro-Palestinian activists. Our political panel will describe what that may or may not mean, and they'll look at much more. Plus, what some are calling the wedding of the century. Our panel of CBS in-house Swifties will join me to talk Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, Madison Square Garden, and all of the things around them. A lot of them. Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout. Millions of student loan borrowers have, starting today, begun to wade through changes to the federal loan system. The sweeping changes, I'll outline them here, include fewer loan repayment options, greater restrictions on how much students can borrow. New borrowing limits will also affect parents, graduate students, and those pursuing professional degrees. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger joins me now. Jill, we turn to you when we need to navigate thickets like this. So help us navigate this new thicket. Specifically, what about those who are enrolled in the Biden-era SAVE plan?
I mean, I think there's a lot here, and I just want to encourage anyone with a federal student loan to go to studentaid.gov. That's the hub, the website where everything is housed. But essentially, we are eliminating this SAVE plan, which was a type of repayment plan from the Biden era, as you said. And there are essentially going to be fewer options for repayment plans. So if you think about it, when you come out of school, you usually get slotted into a program where you're due to pay off a loan at a fixed rate over the course of 10 years. So if you're currently in the SAVE plan and you do nothing, that's what's going to happen to you. And for some, that could result in a much higher payment. Now, the two other options are a general income-based repayment plan. And these are plans that have existed. And this is where you pay 10% of what you earn over the course of 20 years. And then if there's anything left at the end of those 20 years, that will be forgiven. Then there's a new plan. And this one's a little bit strange because there's like a nuance to it. So this is the repayment assistance plan. And this is where you pay a sliding scale, like 1 to 10% of your salary. And that scale changes depending on how much you earn. And the whole key to this is that it's paid out over 30 years. And so for some people, this is like having a mortgage. And I think it's important to say that these plans, they are not uniformly better or worse for anyone. It really depends on your situation. The rules are very intense here because some of the rules on that new plan mean that if you earn $1 over a certain amount, your rate will rise. And they're not inflation adjusted. So things can change and you could end up with a pile of debt that you hadn't expected. Read the fine print.
And are there limits on what prospective students, especially grad students, can now acquire?
Well, I think this is actually one of the things that is really interesting in this plan because we know we've had a broken federal student loan system for some years, decades, in fact. But part of the problem has been that anyone who really wants to borrow money for education has been able to do so. So right now, if you're looking at undergraduate, the cap remains the same, which is $31,500 over the course of 4 years. That's what you're able to borrow. But as you mentioned, it's graduate and some of the professional programs, there are limitations now. And the limitations are between $100,000 and $200,000 in total. One more change here that's very, very important. Parent loans plus loans, those used to not be capped. You literally could be a parent and borrow as much as you wanted to at whatever the interest rate was. And you could do that as long as you just borrowed as much as tuition costs. Now, there is a much lower limit, a total borrowing limit of $65,000. Now, compare that with, say, a parent who's putting out a loan and taking that on for their kid who's going to law school. Those parents in the past could have borrowed $200,000-$300,000. No longer. This is brand new, and this is going to take a lot of people by surprise.
With the numbers and the policy behind it. Jill Schlesinger, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
As we know, pop culture and politics have been getting closer and closer. Now they are fused together, and they might blow all of our collective minds this weekend if, in fact, as you see, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce get married at Madison Square Garden. Two of our political reporters who are in-house Swiftie experts will tell us all what it means. When we come back, this is The Takeout. Welcome back. What I'm about to describe to you are not pop culture breadcrumbs. They are possibly harbingers of a pop culture tsunami. Crews wearing shirts with Taylor Swift's name have been seen loading equipment around Madison Square Garden all week. Today, there were lobster sightings. What does that mean? We're going to find out. Sources tell CBS News about 1,000 people are expected to show up there. For what? What is it going to be? Well, let's bring in our in-house panel of Swifties. CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi, White House producer Gabrielle Ake. Thank you. Gabby.
Yes.
Let me start with you. Real or unreal? Is it happening or no? Is this a head fake?
I was an MSG denier for a very long time, but the signs are all pointing to that it's going to be Madison Square Garden. I mean, she has put a lot of effort into covering up another wedding if this is not going to be there. She's got enough money to certainly do it and enough staff to help her with it, but I think it's happening.
Olivia, are you this happening, or do you harbor some doubts that this could be among the most elaborate ruses ever conducted in American pop culture?
If there was someone to do it, it is Taylor Allison Swift. I hope come Monday we all look like clowns and it actually was somewhere else. I am still a bit of an MSG denier, but the signs just all point to the fact that—
It's a thing, America.
Yeah, MSG denier, but the signs all just point to the fact that I think it is happening there. I think just the level of secrecy around it screams Taylor Swift. It just does.
And there is a practical rationale.
Oh, yeah.
It's safe.
Yes.
It's screenable.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is a legendary global venue.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it's kind of a place that she knows lots of entertainers love, including the President of the United States. And Taylor Swift has at times been political.
Yeah, look, I think she has a long history with MSG. She performed at the Knicks halftime show when she was just a kid, around 12 or 13 years old. And she told Time magazine in 2014 that she has had this sparkly view of Madison Square Garden ever since then. She has lyrics about the venue. She holds on to things like that. And she loves New York. She loves New York. To the privacy point, she went to Jack Antonoff's wedding in 2023 when he married Margaret Qualley. And it was insane, just the level of fans that showed up, kind of ruined the atmosphere a little bit.
Kind of a zoo outside of what it's supposed to be.
Right.
It was a mess, yeah.
It was a mess. And so I think that must stick in her head, just realizing how crazy her fans can be out of love.
Because to that point, Gabby, if she were to get married in any place, there would be drones, there'd be planes.
Absolutely.
There would be every conceivable, and some things we haven't even thought of, ways to surveil or get a picture or find something about that.
And this is someone who is daily dealing with security issues, right? She's got issues with stalkers, fans just being overzealous. She's got such an aura around her, and security is paramount for her. So I think as someone who is focused on that for herself, but also her guests, it has to be somewhere like MSG, which is a place that can accommodate presidents, as we just saw President Trump go to the Knicks game. and other people like that.
It's got muscle memory in the space.
Exactly,
for sure.
it does, and it's somewhere you can secure.
I want to ask both of you, how do you think the larger Swiftian world will deal with this if it in fact is at MSG and it happens when we think it will this 250th anniversary of America weekend?
We've been talking about this. You got to just trust the process with her. You got to just trust her. It's like when a new album for her comes out, the initial gut reaction is, what are we listening to? It's shocking because it's usually different in a lot of ways. And then you let it marinate and you let it sit. And then you go, wait, that's iconic. Like, it was so smart what she did, and it was so different and so unique. She's also the biggest star in the world, not to mention, like, Travis is obviously his own celebrity, but she has such stardom and power. There's no way she's going to put this wedding on, and it's not going to be incredible.
Gabby, you get the last 40 seconds, and she's always been in charge of her life.
Yes.
Externally and obviously internally.
She's always been in charge of her life, and to Olivia's point, she's always also thought about her fans in every event that she does, concerts, music, things like that. She's been very vocal about that. This is about her. So whether or not the fans like it or not, doesn't matter. It's Taylor Swift's wedding day, so it's about her.
And you're going to like it, aren't you?
I mean, like it or not,
Like
it's
it or
her
not,
day.
you're gonna
but
like
you know
it.
what? She deserves it.
I mean, come on, there's a forgiveness zone here, right? Swifties are going to be like, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever, Tay-Tay, whatever you want.
We get it. Yeah, you've had things ruined before because of your level of stardom. Yeah. It's okay if this is what you want to be private. I understand.
Gotta go. Livia Rinaldi, Gabby Egg, thank you so much. Is Kamala Harris reaching out to Zoran Mamdani and pro-Palestinian activists in order to prepare for a 2028 presidential bid? Well, looks like it. That might be the case. Our political panel will help us figure that out. Next on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout, political panel time. I'm so excited. Let me introduce you. Republican strategist Cassie Smedley, Democratic strategist Jaime Mora. Before we get to the politics, do you think it's real or not, Taylor Swift and MSG?
It's a ruse.
It's a ruse?
Yeah.
It's a whole head fake.
I think so.
Cassie?
I agree, but Jaime was the guy who just came from Penn Station, so...
There's a lot of energy over there right now. It's just in New York. A lot of energy.
But it's a big head fake.
I think so.
All right, we're going to hold you to that. We're going to hold you to that. All right, so we talked about this to break. The iron rule is if I go to break on it, we start with it.
Yeah.
An interesting scoop in Axios. Kamala Harris reached out to Zoran Mamdani, New York City mayor, and significantly pro-Palestinian activists to talk about things. Jaime, what's that about?
Look, I'm not surprised by it. I mean, Cassie and I talked about this for the last couple of months. I mean, this was a big piece of Kamala Harris's sort of downfall in 2024. She just could not wrap her head around talking and communicating with this wing of the Democratic Party.
And how aggrieved they felt.
And how aggrieved they felt. And we've seen recently with the DSA emerging as something that's been...
You better pay attention.
You better pay attention. And so I think she's doing her politics correctly. And obviously Mayor Mamdani is the sort of mayor of the moment. So she's doing the right thing, but she's recognizing that she's got to ameliorate this before the next election.
Which means, I'm asking you, is this a tell? Is this the strongest tell of all that she's running?
I think she's doing everything that she can right now to put herself in a position to run again. I think it's very likely, but there's still some consideration that she may not.
Because the first tell was when she didn't run for governor.
Right, exactly. But she wants to keep black voters as close as possible as well.
Cassie?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that so many sort of hedged around whether or not they support Mamdani ahead of his election. And now you have, Kamala Harris remains the favorite in the betting market right now. And she's calling him. What I do think is interesting from a Republican perspective is Mamdani espouses so many of the things that when Kamala Harris talked about them in 2024, voters ran away from that. So it's interesting that instead of saying, what are the lessons we learned from 2024, talk about the DNC autopsy, she's doubling down. She's embracing. She's seeing that this is the future base of the Democrat Party. And as we know, you can't win if you can't turn out your base. It's interesting.
Different topic for you, Cassie, I want to start with. Do you believe any of the disclosures that the public is reading about all day today about Donald Trump and his associated businesses making more than $2 billion while sitting as president of the United States atop the regulatory apparatus that influences some of those gains, is a potentially potent midterm issue?
I don't know if it's a potent midterm issue, in particular because Donald Trump's not on the ballot as much as Democrats will try and make him on the ballot. But I do think this is a whole new industry. I don't know how crypto even works. So most Americans are saying, what is this mystery thing that I'm learning more about? And how did Donald Trump make money off of it? So I think that's more where people have questions. They're just not quite sure what they're looking at. And to the ethical conversation, let's have that. But more broadly, the administration has opened up crypto. Donald Trump was pretty early, even when he wasn't back in the White House, on getting into crypto. So I think his answer to that, and the White House's answers to that, is to say, come join. The water is warm.
Jaime, but I opened this show by noting Reuters reporting a month ago that showed a lot of Americans invested directly or indirectly with things in this space, thinking because Donald Trump was associated with it and the regulatory environment would be more favorable, which it is, but they lost money. He's made money.
Look, I largely agree with Cassie on the opening up crypto, and I obviously have some friends who are in that industry who are doing pretty well. But I think the normal American people are asking themselves right now, if the Trump family can make billions of dollars and I haven't been able to close my paycheck gap, what does that mean? And so while he's on the ballot for the midterms, I do think affordability, I know we bastardized this term so much, but it's still on the ballot. And I think when you have this mirror image of the president making billions of dollars and then you're struggling to pay for your health care, your kids' child care, then there are questions about, are these things working?
I want to give you polling from New York Times, Siena, 3 races: Ohio, Maine, Alaska. John Husted, the Republican, 50. Sherrod Brown, formerly in the Senate, 47. Margin of error. Maine, Grant Plattner up to 49-47 over sitting Senator Republican Susan Collins. Alaska, Dan Sullivan, 47. Maria Petola, Democrat, 45. They're all very, very close. Pick one of those as a Republican, Cassie, you're most nervous about.
Probably John Husted, Ohio.
In Ohio.
Because Sherrod Brown is a unicorn Democrat candidate, of which I'm sure Jaime wishes the entire map was a bunch of Sherrod Browns, because he's a very savvy politician and also savvy for Ohio. But John Husted, also very popular in Ohio, a red state.
Pick one of those 3 that you think is the best opportunity for Democrats.
Look, I think Ohio as well, and it's not fair because Cassie and I talk about this quite often, but I do think that Sherrod Brown is bringing a singular message to Ohio right now, even more than the last election. I think he is the model for winning.
Ohioans tell me his ads are much, much tougher.
They are. They really are.
Cassie, Smedley, Jaime Moore, thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Up next, celebrating America's 250th birthday, Pulitzer Prize-winning historian, best-selling author John Meacham talks about his new patriotic project. That's next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Welcome to The Takeout Tavern. Historian John Meacham is serving as the National Constitution Center Semi-Quincentennial Scholar for, of course, the nation's 250th birthday. I spoke with him about the festivities and how Americans are feeling about it all. Here's some of our conversation. John, I'm going to give you some numbers in a minute from some recent surveys nationally, but one of the big takeaways from a collection of surveys is America seems to feel somewhat ambivalent about its 250th anniversary. Why do you think that might be?
I think that it's about the political divide, and there's an irony at work, which is that even the people who are in power are not particularly happy, which tells you something about the motive force behind that particular political movement. At the moment, we've had 3 presidential elections since 2016, and they have been about grievance. They've been about fear more than hope. Part of the MAGA movement, and this is not a partisan observation, it's just an observation, is driven by this sense that the country is slipping away, that the culture is cracking up, that it requires an immediate to the barricades kind of reaction, this constant drama that we all live in. And that doesn't create happiness. It creates a kind of political bloodlust, which is different than satisfaction. And then if you're on the other side of the equation, you think the world's going to hell. So I think those are even if you're winning, you're not happy. And if you're losing, you're really not happy.
Gallup found that 77% of Americans say they believe the founders, viewing what exists today, would be disappointed.
I think they would be surprised it took this long, honestly. When you really dig into the Federalist Papers, when you think about what they worried about most, it was about human passion overwhelming reason. It was about what Hamilton called force and accident overwhelming reason and deliberation, reflection and deliberation. Abraham Lincoln's first great public speech in the late 1830s was about how a towering genius could rise among us and become a demagogue. And so the checks and balances of the Constitution, the check on our appetites and our ambitions, it was designed for moments like this. The key thing is that this is also, it's not just a question of the substance of the Constitution. It's also about the spirit, because you can't write down a law that absolutely covers everything. So people like you and me use the word norms and customs, and sometimes people roll their eyes. But you know what? What we mean is just doing what seems the commonsensical right thing to do in accordance with those documents.
And John, on the optimistic side, I have to believe that if the founders knew we'd made it 250 years, their first impulse would be fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, Jefferson thought every 21 years we'd sort of rise and fall, or there would be a revolution. I think it would surprise them that there are so few amendments to the Constitution. But, when you say something like that, you then have to step back and realize it would surprise them that there are 50 states. Right. They were working in a much smaller context. And so until 1802, 1803, when Louisiana joins, when we make the Louisiana Purchase, it's still a pretty self-contained continental country.
And I think they would be proud, and this is, I know, a sort of overtly pro-American sentiment. It's not universally true, but I think it is true over the long history of mankind that as an empire or a near empire, we have been more pacified than others that came before us. That is to say, we did not look and seek conflict. We engaged when necessary. In certain aspects we did, but I think the founders might be proud of that.
Yes, I think we have been. Now, of course, the traditional American left would.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah, it would explode. But I think fundamentally that's right. As John Quincy Adams said, we've not gone in search of monsters to destroy. And that's cut both ways, right? Our isolationism has helped feed that pacific nature you're talking about. It's also made us too slow sometimes to actually confront monsters who are out there. The 1939 to 1941 period in particular.
Classic example of that, yeah.
Right? We didn't declare, if you ask most Americans what's the greatest thing we've done, I think you'd get abolition of slavery and then probably the Second World War. But we didn't declare war on Nazi Germany until Nazi Germany declared war on us 5 days after Pearl Harbor. So it's proof that Churchill was right, that you can always count on the Americans to do the right thing once they've exhausted every other possibility.
You can listen to my full conversation with John Meacham on your favorite podcast platform. Now, our Bicentennial Minutes. Draw near, you Game Show Network aficionados, and you know who you are. If you've been watching the Game Show Network since it launched in 1994, who, me? And even if you haven't watched for that long, you probably have some familiarity with these two Bicentennial Minute presenters. Kitty Carlisle and Bert Convy both were actors and singers, but gained far more fame as regulars on some of this country's most popular TV game shows ever, such as What's My Line?, To Tell the Truth, Password, and Match Game. Back-to-back Bicentennial Minutes from two game show icons.
I'm Kitty Carlisle. 200 years ago today, American families were naming their children after their favorite patriot heroes. Mr. and Mrs. Tuckerman of Dedham, Massachusetts, baptized their infant son, George Washington Tuckerman. In Greenfield, Connecticut, the Wakefield's new child was christened Charles Lee, after Washington's second in command. Local newspapers proudly reported these patriotic christenings. They also told about one less than popular choice. In Stratford, Connecticut, neighbors were threatening Mr. and Mrs. Edwards with tar and feathers. The Edwards were loyalists. They named their baby to honor a man the rebels had called a monster, Thomas Gage, Britain's former commander-in-chief for the colonies. I'm Kitty Carlisle, and that's the way it was.
These historic minutes are sponsored each night by Shell.
200 years ago today, the British moved against New York in the most awesome display of military might the war had yet seen. All morning, boats beached on the western tip of Long Island. Pipes shrilled and drums beat as the red and forest green-clad regiments formed along the 3-mile beach. By noon, 15,000 soldiers and 40 cannon were ready to move. Washington rushed his troops into a solid line along heavily wooded Gowan Ridge, knowing he had to hold Brooklyn to keep the city itself. A major turning point of the revolution was about to begin. I'm Bert Convy. That's the way it was.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. The Daily Report is coming up next.